Well, thank y'all for coming today. Today we're going to talk about rubbing out a finish. And why would we want to do that? Well, it's actually a neat part of finishing. And what we can do, this is wood I've used for years. I was this thick when I started, and I tried different finishes and different things. And when I've done all I can do, I run it through the planer and I have a fresh surface. And eventually I get down to the plywood and have to make another one. But this is what a normal finish feels like after you let it put on there and dry. Run your fingers over that. Even though that's a smooth surface, it's a gloss finish, you can feel all kinds of nubs. That's the particles in the air that landed on that finish when it was still wet. And there might be other things that are what's called an orange peel effect. Normally you get that when it's really, really hot and you're spraying a finish. If you're a little bit too far away, you're not putting as much product in the spray as you should, the finish actually dries before it hits the wood. So it doesn't spread out, it clumps. It looks like an orange peel. Once you've got effect on the first coat, any other finish you put on that is going to duplicate the orange peel. You can put on 20 coats, it's still going to look like orange peel. So you can rub out, we got chairs over there, sure, if you want. So you want to rub out the finish. And when we talk about rubbing out a finish, we're going to talk about two types of finish. One is a oil finish that goes into the wood. One is a surface finish that stays on top of the wood, doesn't go in. So that means we can talk about varnishes, we can talk about lacquers, we can talk about shellacs, we can talk about urethanes, we can talk about polyurethane. All of those finishes can be rubbed. It's just a question of what do you want to accomplish when you do that. If you're telling me you want a finish that looks like it's wet all the time, get comfortable because you got a lot of stuff coming down the road at you. The first thing we need to understand is that finishes are a whole lot thinner than the piece of wood we're working on. This is 220 grit, and I'll pass this around. 220 grit, people think, oh man, that's really sanding it smooth. This is 2000 grit. This is 220 to a finish. So pass these around and get an idea of the difference. A 220 grit is like a 60 grit to a finish. And that's not something we want to do. Also, we don't normally, with the exception of the oils, we don't rub out a finish with the idea of putting more finish on top. And why we want to do that? Suppose I'm rubbing this out. And in the course of rubbing, especially if I'm using mechanical sander, I blow through the finish and hit the wood. Okay? Now I might have been using 1000 grit paper or 2000 grit, 1500. But once I get raw wood, I can't just put finish on that spot because I've sanded stuff to 1500 and 2000. A new finish won't stick on that. So what I need to do is I need to take the whole piece of wood down to wood and start over. So it's really important if you don't want to do stuff like that to don't blow through the finish. So if you know from day one that you are going to possibly rub out the finish, then you want at least 10 coats on. More if you really want that wet look. So what we want to do is kind of figure out what are we going to do with this piece? Is this piece going to have a satin finish or is it going to be high gloss? High gloss, about 15 coats if I know I'm going to rub it. If I'm not going to rub it, I don't care. If it's going to be a satin finish, at least 5. Because we're going to take some of the finish off when we do the rubbing out of the finish. If we just know that our shop is dusty, because every time I put a finish on, I felt these nubs, then 3 coats is fine, because all we're going to do is knock this down and keep it satin and call it a day. And that's pretty quick. I recommend mechanical sanders with the following proviso. If I'm doing a conference room desk, okay, yeah, I'm pretty much going to have to go to something so that don't start with the machine until you're up into high grits, or put like 20 coats of finish on to give you some wiggle room. You're going to use water on these surface finishes as the lubricant. You're not going to use any water on the oil finishes. Okay? So what we want to do first of all is, now I'm going to start with 2000 grit. Normally I'd start, depending on the finish and how many layers I had on here, I probably start at 800. And you're going to find as you put the finish on and look at this in the light, you're going to get dark areas or dull areas and shiny areas. Dull areas I've used sanded. Shiny areas you haven't, because the wood has got a little dip to it. Another thing, if you're going to rub out a surface finish, any of the ones that dry on top of the wood that don't go in it, you need at least 2 weeks. That finish has got to dry for at least 2 to 3 weeks before you start. It's got to be dry all the way through. And think about it. If I put on 15 coats of finish, one on top of the other with however recommended time between, that stuff, the surface is going to lose its stuff in volatiles quickly. Stuff down here, those volatiles have to migrate through the whole thing before they go. If you don't do that, the surface is hard, but the underneath is not. And it'll mess up for you. You need to give it at least 2 to 3 weeks, just depending on how hot it is outside, the humidity, and go to town there. So what we want to do, start with, you want to put a little water. Won't water hurt the wood? No, the wood's sealed. That's what the finish does. The water, liquid water, can't get to the wood. Water vapor can, but the liquid can't. I like to use some type of board like this. This is cork. You can use felt, or you can wrap this up and use your fingers, but I like to use some type of cushion. And all we're going to do, and this is when we don't have to worry about going with the grain, I just do a little circular pattern. You don't press hard. And as you go, you can feel the sandpaper just go over the wood, and all of a sudden, it's going to start dragging. That means you need more water. So keep the bottle handy. Now this was shiny, and I put all the duns and dings in my test piece. I'll pass this around. What you're going to see a scratch pattern here, okay? That scratch pattern is the sandpaper, and this didn't dry for 2 weeks. It dried for about an hour. So that's why you need to let it dry. This is what, if you have a soft underneath, it will do. Plus, you're going to see shiny areas that are low. You're going to see dull areas that are high. But the biggest thing I want to show you is run your fingers over this now. If I know I'm putting a finish on it, and I know I'm going to do this just to take out dust particles, so when people feel, because the first thing a woodworker does is do this. Okay? You've all felt this. You've all felt all those little dust nibs. Run your fingers across it now. So the first type of finish we want to rub out is just any general purpose finish that we do, that if we're in an environment in our shop, we don't have a dedicated finishing area, that we walk through the shop, we kick up dust gets on it, and we can feel it. Plan your project so that the very last thing you're going to do is you're going to take a little water, a little 2000 grit, and lightly go over it. Now again, you won't get those scratches. That's just because that surface hasn't dried completely. And you might say, well, Rick, why did you do that? Because I want to show you guys, if you don't let it dry, what you're going to get. Plus, I want to show you how smooth it is. Now, we can also, if we wanted to go further, we can actually start polishing. And normally when you put a polish on, now you're really going to want to go to a mechanical. This is some polish I got from Festool that I use. This is the one you put on first. This is going to be a nice gloss finish. This is going to be a super gloss. Now, once you start to it, you're adding stuff to the wood stuff's getting into pores, you really make sure you've got all that old polish cleaned out, because if you want to go to a higher grit polish, you're going to contaminate it with the rougher stuff. So you want some good type of cleaner that you can wipe down the piece of wood with. When you talk about using mechanicals, know that you've got different types of wrong one. And this is the regular pad that comes with a D90. And this is what they call a medium pad. You can run your fingers in, you can press it, and it's got some give to it. This is the hard pad. So, first of all, you need to know what type of pad your mechanical has on it. You want a soft pad. Now, to get a soft Festool, either you're going to get something like these, or you can actually buy one. These are little covers that go either on a hard or on a medium. It doesn't matter, but this makes it soft. This one you use just for buffing with no compound. This applies the polish. This brushes the polish, or buffs the polish. So now you started to add a lot more stuff to the mix. We go back to the sandpaper a second. What sandpapers do we use? I start at 600. 600 is like 100 grit to a finish. And then I like to go through the steps: 6, 8, 12, 15, 2. Why? Because those grits particle size half. So a particle at 600 grit, at 800 grit, it's half the size. At 1,000 grit, it's half the size. At 1,200 grit, it's half the size, all the way down. So if you go from 600 to 1,200, you're sanding a lot more, because you've got deep scratches and you've got little nubs. You've got to take everything down. So it saves you money, but you're going to double or triple the time you spent sanding. So if you don't care about doubling or tripling your time sanding, then you can skip grits. If that doesn't appeal to you, please don't skip grits. Okay. We will put a little. Now, another thing you should know about this can get messy. And that's okay. Messy is not bad. And then what I like to do, I like to put a little take this, rub around a little bit, and then make sure it's not random orbit. Now, do you have to do this with Festool? No, there's other manufacturers out here that have the same kind of stuff. What you do need, though, is a mechanical, and you need the bonnets, or what you have to get the polish on and spread it around. And then, just depending on how much you have to do, just get comfortable. You never want to try to rush it. Thank you. Double it. Now, normally I would do several of these polishes. In fact, I might just try it again just to show you. Now, look what the polish did. First of all, everything is more uniform. You can still see some higher low pots, so that tells you that if you don't see a uniform surface, you need to go back and do some more. But scratches are gone. So this really does take it. Now, when I do stuff, I'll do that on pieces like I want to display and really show off. And not so much as tables and furniture, I'm talking about stuff that goes on furniture. So like for the humidors I make, I will put on a lot of finish sometimes if I'm using a lacquer type finish, just so I can do this. And I'm not trying to get it high gloss. I think high gloss shows too many boo-boos. I just like it to look really nice, to feel smooth as silk. And so I know going into the project, that's what I'm going to do. Some crannies in the project. A lot of times I'm going to do the finish before I actually glue them up, so I can get in there real well. So if I've got a nice board that I've got inlay in, or I've done something that I really want to highlight, I'll finish that whole thing completely, then wrap it around a frame and glue that up. And it's easy when I'm doing a glue up then, because the finish is already down. If any glue spills over, you just wipe it right up and you'll never see it. Now these scratches are in the finish because the finish isn't particularly thick. So we'll put another coat on there and we'll see what happens. That's the nice part about having multiple layers, because as you work on it, you've got a lot of wiggle room. Just the biggest thing I can say is don't try to rush it. And what I mean by that is using something really aggressive. This is not the time for that. This is time to take your, because you really don't want to blow through the finish. Is it better just to put it on the pad or put it on the wood surface? I've just always put it on the pad. That way I can use the pad to help clean the top clean. And a little. If there's any one place you're going to blow through the finish, it's on the edges. Because the edges, the finish, a lot of times will just peel over the edge. So its thick starts to flow, so that right at the edge, it's a little bit thinner than the rest. So be real careful around the edges. And now another pad I could use if I want to is this one. This is a buffing pad. There we go. And just like before, wipe up any extra. Now, if you didn't have a cleaning solution or something like that, or you're worried about dust getting and stuff, get a microfiber cloth. These are fantastic for doing what we're doing, because this will get off a whole lot of dust and debris. So as we use this more and more, the surface is getting more uniform. Still got the dings and dents, but we knew that going in because this is what I use to practice fixing dings and dents. So what you want to do is just look around and see if you can see that reflection. If you can start seeing reflections, you're on your way to a really high gloss. Then we're going to put on this really high gloss stuff here. Now, I think we all go through our periods of what type of finish and how we do it, and roll it into a satin finish. I think you just can't go wrong with satin finish. It makes the thing look really good. It doesn't show all the defects and the bumps. Some things demand a gloss finish, and when I think of stuff like that, it's my wife saying no. But I always try to go satin. I think satin is nice. You can really get it looking luxurious. You can actually find yourself looking into the surface of the wood. However, if you're going to go high gloss, you really need these polishes. And when I say polishes, you need polishes. Doesn't have to be Festool polishes, but you really need polishes. Now, I got this stuff because Festool has a package where if you want to do really good finishing, you buy all their stuff, and they make it really easy. For example, I'll show you how easy they make it. Look at the top. Here's pictures. This is the buffing one. So all you have to do is buy products that look just like this. Same thing. There's the applicator. There's the buffer. So they make it as easy as they can for you. The only thing they could do any better would be one, use this first, or two, use this second. The cleaner I really like. This really does a good job. It doesn't leave any residue. It gets the old polish up and doesn't leave it. You are just as crystal clear, ready to go. And now we'll use this one. And then we will try a little bit of oil. Sometimes it's very painful to put this thing back through the planer to get a fresh surface. This one's purple. One of our survival traits is our ability to see patterns in everything. We're really, really, really good, our eyes are at identifying patterns. So when you're sanding and you don't want them to see sanding marks, be as okay. Now we'll go back to this one. Because this is going to get right down to the surface. Now, one thing I've noticed on these, watch this bristle. You can stop a random orbit if you press too hard. Again, I didn't let this dry 2 to 3 weeks. I don't have 20 coats. But in all the things I did wrong, so to summarize for film finishes, microfiber cloths are good. If 600 grit is going to be like 80 grit as far as the finish goes, because the finish is so thin. That's why you need at least, if you're just going to take the nubs off with a 2000 grit and call it a day, 5 coats is fine. 3 to 5 coats is fine. If you're going to do more than that, you're into 10 to 15. If you're really going to jump down the rabbit hole and want something so that it looks wet all the time, looks like Steinway piano, you're talking 20 to 25 and a lot of time. However, know that going in. If you're going to design a project and you want to do this type of finish, if it's really intricate, you know that you're finishing stages and then bring the pieces together, not just do it at the end. This sheet paper and a block like this is excellent. Yeah.
Could you use clear coat polish like you use on the automobile for clear coat?
No, silicone. No, silicone. A lot of automobile finishes have silicone in it. You don't want anywhere near your wood. That's going to prevent you from doing anything else to that piece. So you get clear coats here, but our clear coats don't have silicone in it. Just, you want to use a woodworking clear coat. Don't use an automotive clear coat. So you can use automotive sandpaper. And even the sandpaper is going to have, the automotive sandpaper is going to have soap in it. So you have to make sure you clear all the soap out before you do something with the finish. Okay? Okay.
You're doing a 20 coat.
Nothing. You're just, all your sanding stuff is going to be done at the surface. You just want to leave enough in there because you're going to start off, exaggerating, you're going to start off with a surface like this and you're going to finish with a surface like that. So what you're trying to do is, if you're doing that work, you'll always see the pores. Okay? If you look straight down, you're going to see all the pores. But when you look in the light, you won't see where the pores are. It will be a flat, uniform surface. That's going to take it out. When you start sanding with the 800, the 1200, that's when the orange peels are going to go. No, you take it to 2000, and then if you're happy with 2000, you can stop. But if you want to go more, because 2000 is going to give you more than a satin, a little less than a semi-gloss, you're going to be right in that area. If you want it really shiny, then you need to go to the polishes. If you're happy with what you got, now a lot of times, since I want satin anyway, I'll sand with 2000 just to get rid of the dust nubs, and they'll be gone. And that's all you really need to do. It makes it really make it quick and easy. The biggest thing is at least enough. If I'm spraying, it's 20 coats. If I'm using a brush lacquer, it's 10 coats. Why? Because the brush is going to have a thicker coat than what I spray. Also, the brush is going to have more solids in it than what I spray. So stuff is meant for spraying and normally doesn't have as much solids, so it can get out the nozzle better. You're really going to get orange peel if it's really dry, really hot, and you don't have enough solids in your spray. It's actually going to harden before it hits the wood. So if you're spraying this far and you get an orange peel, spray this far. It'll still be wet. It's got to be wet to flatten. If it's already started to dry, it's just going to have little bumps all over the place. It's just what orange peel is. So if you see orange peel, don't panic. Just keep on putting more and more layers on there, because you can always rub it out and get rid of it. That's not an issue. An oil finish. An oil finish is unique in the fact that oil has got to go in the wood to harden. So if it's not in the wood, it's just going to turn into a sticky. What we do is we need to put it on with sandpaper. You can put it on with, if you get one of these pads, you can put it on with this, because this abrades. You probably wouldn't want this. You'd probably want a green one or a maroon one. I'm going to do this with this 2000 grit. Now, normally when you put an oil finish on, you wait 24 hours before you put the next coat on. Obviously, we're not going to do that. But what I'm going to do here, this is already dry. And I like using Odie's, one, because we already had it open, and two, because it's a gel and doesn't run and get over everything. So here it is. If I just left this like it is, that would turn into a sticky gooey mess. And that's where it would stay. So with your sandpaper, I'm doing this with my fingers because this board is really warped. And I want to get good coverage. If you've ever heard of a hand-rubbed oil finish, this is how you do it. Now, since we are actually sanding the wood, we do want to sand with the grain with this. Now, we're making scratch marks, and we're immediately filling the scratch marks with an oil. And we're going to do this for a while. Make sure you get the edges really good. But this is that hand-rubbed oil finish you've heard so much about in Song and Story. Now we'll just flip this out of the side, get a fresh surface. Can I ever get an oil finish to look high glossy? The answer is yes, you can. You know how? Let it dry for 3 weeks, then spray a high gloss finish on top of it. Because the oil itself will never be glossy. Now, you've got to wipe up all the excess. We've already got the oil in the wood, all the oil that the wood will take. So now everything that's little on top will dry, won't dry. So this is where we really want to come in here. There's the dust I kicked up just by sanding with 2000. You'll find out that sanding like this way is pretty nice because you don't raise any dust at all. We want to wipe it down really well. I don't want anything on that surface. And now we let it dry. And if I want to put another coat on, I'd wait 24 hours and put it. But now, yucky, pretty. Again, if you run your fingers across this is as smooth as smooth can be. Now that's so warped, it's the only thing we could use it for as a demo, but it really does a good job. You only get one chance to put the first coat of oil on, when the wood will take as much oil as it can. That's when you just flood it until it won't take any more, then wipe it up really well. After that, if you want to give it a deep, rich luster that looks gorgeous, you do this walnut, and walnut just actually sings. 24 hours. Start with 600 grit, and every grit I'd kick it up one. 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200, 50. Stop at 2. You can stop anywhere along the way, but don't take it past 2. Don't buff this. It's not going to do anything because it's in the wood. The literal surface of the wood is what you see. The other big thing is, unlike the film finishes, once you've started that process and you're really into that high grits, you can't put more film finish on top because it won't adhere. You've sanded the surface too smooth. Oil, that doesn't matter, because oil, every time we sand, that sandpaper is abrading the surface, exposing fresh. We just don't see it because we've got oil on the sandpaper. You could use these. It's no problem. You can use these. These are abrasive pads. They do a good job. Steel wool does a good job. I like the sandpaper. If I was going to take this further than sandpaper, after 2000, yeah, I'd go to this gray or 4/0 steel wool. But after that, you're kind of chasing at windmills because it will never be glossy. And once you're at 2000 grit, I defy your fingers to feel smoother as far as you're going over that. But oil, the biggest thing about oil is the amount of time. I tried it, and something's wrong with the oil because it never dried. That's because it was sitting on top of the wood. You didn't wipe it off. Well, the instructions don't say that. Oh, yeah, they do. But both these things are really, really good to take your woodworking to the next step. Anybody can come here, buy a can of spray and spray stuff on, or brush stuff on and sit back and call it a day. But if you want it to be so smooth to touch, and you guys felt this when we started, this was crazy. And now, as bad as this was to start off with, I'm getting reflections. When you can show up here and put your hands down here and you can see the reflection. I mean, not only am I seeing reflection, I'm seeing color in the reflection. Imagine what this would have looked like if I had let this wait 3 weeks before I did it. So if I can make something bad look good, imagine what you would get if you actually follow directions. Any questions about any of this? Yeah.
The difference between pure tongue oil
Uh-huh.
and tongue oil that you buy, what is it, Formby's or somebody like that is, I guess it's got hardeners or something mixed with it,
It's got dryers.
dryers. That will gloss if you put enough coats on it. Is it because of the dryers?
It's because you forget one of our finishes we have, the green can, I can't think, Anchors, no. Anyway, it's a tongue wall urethane combination, okay? It's doing two things. The oil is going into the wood and giving the wood a unique flavor, but you've also got urethane resins. Urethane resins can't go into the wood. No matter how hard they try, they can't do it. They're going to sit on top. So you're getting a tongue oil that's actually penetrating into the wood, and the urethane resin sit on top as a shield. So basically, you're getting both finishes at once. Now, the very first time you put it on, the tongue oil of the oil, tongue oil, goes into the wood. When you put on a second coat, I'll wipe up the excess. There's no oil touching that wood anymore. It's all urethane resin now, because the oil physically can't get into the wood because you've got a layer in between of urethane. So you're kind of wasting your money. You didn't hear me say that. So if you really want to make something spectacular, you would take this, you would put however many layers of oil you wanted on here, sanding and wiping off 24 hours in between, then you let it sit for 3 weeks. Then I'd come over here and I'd put a lacquer or a poly or a tabletop varnish or something on top and build up those layers, and you can rub it out and you're going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to get, if I use polyurethane, you're going to get some, you can rub out poly. You can make poly just glitter, but you'd have the beautiful wood from the oil that shows. And then because of the poly on top, it's impervious to alcohol cleaners, it's impervious to ammonia cleaners, kitchen, bathroom, it doesn't matter. You can make it on a dining room table, it won't scratch. You've got the best of both worlds. You're always going to have a better finish if you run a combine to run them separate. Now, could you get both? It's pre-mixed together? Yeah, you sure can. And they do a great job. I used that finish for years and years. And then I started thinking, well, what happens if I do it this way instead? And whoa, I like that better. So all of this we're trying to get you to tell you is come out of your comfort zone. One of the things you might want to do, especially if you find yourself playing with veneers, you've got a veneer left over, little pieces, glue them to plywood and start playing with finishes. Sanding stuff. Best way to find out how much you can sand your veneer is put an extra piece on a piece of plywood and sand it till you go through. You know exactly how long it takes. It won't surprise you. And that's what we're trying to do, is take away the surprises. Again, in my shop, a lot of times between projects, I look around at all the little bits and pieces and I put stuff together, and I play with all the finishes, what I like, what I don't like, how hard it is, how easy it is. If you've ever tried to get orange peel on purpose, you know what it takes to get orange peel. So then if I don't do that, I won't get orange peel. Now, if I'm thinking, I'll take a test spray, and that's the first thing I look for, because you're always trying to save the amount of solids. You don't want to put so much on there you get runs. But then again, you don't want to put so little on there, you get yuck. So it's just and once you find the right combinations you like, then take that whatever project you work for days or weeks or months on. That's only when you apply finish to it. You don't discover new things on that piece that took you so long to make. You discover it on scrap pieces first. That's why we always tell you, if you're going to make any project, keep some wood just like you used on a project. Whatever you do to the project with sanding, anything, you do it to those extra pieces of wood. And now when you come to finishes and colors, that's what you try it on first. You don't try it on what you spent all this time to fix and work up. Any questions?